When we see hair loss, our first thought is that it's something happening on the surface, right? But what if it's actually a smoke signal, a sign of a much deeper problem going on inside the body? Today, we're going to dive into that surprising link between internal inflammation and the health of your hair. So let's reframe this for a second. Instead of just looking in the mirror and worrying about what you see on your head, what if your hair is actually trying to tell you a story about what's happening inside your body? Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, it all starts with a really basic but super important question about inflammation itself and why it's just so disruptive to everything. Yeah, the question seems simple, but the answer, whoa, it reveals this incredible domino effect. It's this whole cascade of problems that can end up impacting everything, from our most important organs right down to, you guessed it, our hair follicles. To really wrap our heads around this, let's use a metaphor. This is a really powerful one. Think of inflammation as your body's own internal fire. This quote really just hits the nail on the head. When your body is inflamed, it's basically in a constant state of emergency. It's desperately trying to put out all these little fires that are popping up inside. And this slide illustrates the core problem perfectly. Look on the left. In a normal, healthy state, all the nutrients you take in are like construction workers, They're building and repairing everything, including your hair follicles. But look on the right. When that internal fire alarm goes off, all those workers, they get diverted. They have to become firefighters, and all that important construction work just grinds to a halt. So, of course, every fire needs fuel. And a surprisingly common source of fuel for this internal fire is, believe it or not, your gut. Let's take a closer look at that connection. Yep, one of the biggest fuel sources for this chronic body-wide fire is something people call leaky gut. Now, I know it sounds a little strange, but stick with me, because it's a huge piece of this puzzle. So here's how it works, broken down into 3 steps. First, the protective barrier in your gut gets damaged or disrupted. Then, step 2, things like toxins and undigested food particles can leak into your bloodstream, which your body sees as an invasion, and that creates even more inflammatory fires. And this brings us to the crucial 3rd step. Your body is now fighting a war on multiple fronts, just burning through its nutrient resources trying to keep all these fires under control. Now, this isn't just a temporary issue. When this state of emergency goes on and on for the long term, it turns into something way more serious. It becomes what many call a silent killer. And what we're talking about here is chronic inflammation. This isn't like a sprained ankle. It's a low-grade, smoldering fire that can burn for months or even years without you really knowing it's there. And that's exactly why it gets that scary name, a silent killer. And the consequences, well, they go way beyond just your hair. I mean, look at this. Studies have linked this chronic inflammatory state to some of our most serious health problems: autoimmune conditions, diabetes, heart failure, even hyperlipidemia, that's high cholesterol. This is a truly systemic problem. Which brings us all the way back to where we started. How does this internal war actually cause damage at the very root of our hair? So, what's the direct connection? How does this massive nutrient drain that we've been talking about actually show up as visible hair loss? Well, the answer is all in the hair growth cycle. This constant inflammation directly messes with the most important part of that cycle, the anagen phase. That's the phase when your hair is actively growing. Think about it. The fire department is so busy that the hair construction site just gets shut down completely. So when your body is in full-on survival mode and it's forced to ration its precious resources, what's the number one thing that gets its budget cut? Non-essential tissues. And from a pure survival point of view, your body considers your hair totally non-essential. And here's the really serious part. If this state of emergency goes on for long enough, that temporary shutdown can actually become permanent. The disruption can be so severe that it leads to irreversible damage and ultimately permanent hair loss. And all of this leaves us with one last, really crucial question to think about. Maybe the changes you're seeing in your hair aren't just about getting older or your genetics. Maybe your hair is sending you a message, a warning sign about a deeper fire burning inside. And perhaps it's time we all started listening.